Does the idea of trying something new or meeting new people have you pulling back and retreating? What about your job or project that requires you to move beyond your comfort zone? What happens when your willingness to learn is interested, but then your mind pulls out all the stops? My guest today has been faced with many challenges in her short life. Amy Thurman broke her neck, faced life and death consequences repeatedly, and has been knocked back by life on many occasions. Her award-winning book about her story, Finding My Hero Within, was a way for Amy to bring her harrowing story forward, to inspire herself and to inspire those reading about her story and learning from her lessons. Amy's here today to talk about a bigger subject than even all of that. And with the book tour and speaking engagements, Amy has been asked to go to places she never imagined, engage with audience she needed to speak to and inspire, and to continue her healing journey while involved in this big event called Living Life. Amy, welcome back to the podcast. It is so good to have you here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me again. I always love to visit with you. It's always such a pleasure. Thank you, Michelle.
So, for those people that maybe didn't listen to the podcast we recorded about her book and about her story, please go back and have a listen to that. That would be in season 3. And then what we're going to do today is go beyond that story and really dive into where we place ourselves when we're bold and we move forward and what happens and then how we're going to position from there. Before we get started, we need to talk about tea. And I think listeners, I know you know that I bring out, 1 cup of tea and I like to highlight the 2 herbs, but you're going to be what's magical today, what has happened. So Amy, share which tea you chose today.
I have the SoulTEA Harbour tea, using the SoulTEA Harbour, but I added thyme to it as well. So I made my own little combination of tea today, and I love the message on the SoulTEA Harbour. Balance and flow is possible when we open to be present for our true heart's desires. Come home to your heart. That just resonates with me deeply, and I just love that so much.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the addition of the time in there, if you and I were talking about that before we hit the record button, allows for courage, protection, and healing, and provides for versatility and strength. So as we're looking about what does it take to walk through that fear, which you've already walked through before, thinking you might be done, and then to face the next pieces of life and what it means to go forward. So your addition of time is incredible to add to that. And I had Time Passages tea this morning for our fundraising event. And then I had set up for us to use Brador Sunset of what I would contribute today. And if we look at the Harmony blends, which you took 3 of those teas on tour with you for the book signing, these teas walk people through trauma, could be walking through fear. It's that opportunity to go from that starting place through what you need to go through to get to that end piece where you can really see what's on the other side. And so I chose Brador Sunset today, which is at the end for sacral chakra, or finding our energy and our fire within our belly to be able to move forward. This one is put yourself at ease as you center into the golden memories that rejuvenate and inspire you. So for some people, golden memories can be tough memories, but those tough memories do have some really incredible lessons, which I know you'll be able to talk about further. And that opportunity to think about what have I learned and how have I grown and who am I because of that. So between our 2 teas, we've gone from finding that belly within, going to our heart center. And then I always pull a card from my Harmony coasters that we created to go with the teas. And I don't always tell people that I've done that when I go to do the podcast. It's just here. But I have to share this one today because it brings us one more place. So the card that I ended up pulling is actually coming up to the brow, and the brow chakra allows us that opportunity to see the new ideas, find the new perspective. And that is part of our conversation. So I kind of had a giggle today.
I
It
love that.
has it has the note of A, The flame of passion, love, joy, acceptance, security, enlightenment, achievement, and compassion are one with you now. And the days of old become faded memories as you realize and accept your true potential from Source.
Mm.
You freely walk, leaving the shadows of doubt behind. Yeah.
Oh, good.
So I'm placing my tea on top of that as we go into this discussion. And for those people listening, this is a great way when you're using these affirmations and intentions to find the way to put the energy towards where you really want to be. And it's so easy because it's sip on a sip on a tea blend and put down a coaster. I love it. So Amy, thank you for coming to share on this conversation, and cheers.
Of course. Cheers. You might go.
Mine has a present on the inside. So while I'm sipping tea, I actually unwrap the present, which also is a beautiful metaphor for life.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
All right, let's dive in. So we want to talk about fear and where you've been going with all of these new experiences that have come from book signings, being out in the public more, and you've had photos with all kinds of beautiful people. Do you want to share that experience?
Sure, I would love to. It first of all, I will say that I am a true introvert, that I don't I much peopling exhausts me. And so there is an innate fear there of being around people too much, really drains my energy. And so I started out with I've got to be able to take care of myself and know what I need to be able to give myself the time to recenter and just to recharge. And so that coming into play, and then all of these opportunities that I have had in my life, and I still am having in my life, I'm really having to balance the two and to work through the fear of, is it going to be too much? Is it going to be overwhelming to my system? But I have, yes, had some really amazing opportunities, and I feel like they have just found me. I have really focused on doing the internal work, focused on being who I am authentically, who I am, my truest self. And through the authenticity and the vulnerability that I have been able to reach all of these things in my life, these things just find their way to me because I am focused on authenticity. I'm not focused on notoriety or fame or any of that. That's really, I don't even think about that stuff. And
Mhm.
so when these things have happened in my life, it's just like kind of a shock to me, like, oh my gosh, what's even happening? And so I don't know if you want me to go into specifics of what I have been doing recently, but I'm happy
I,
to do that if you'd like.
yeah, I would love for everybody to hear because um, there's so many people that would love to write a book, first of all, if we go to that part of your story, and to be able to write and publish a book. But then there's the next part, which is how do you sell the book? And that's a huge journey, and one that you've been out doing the book signings and traveling. And I think for people who have been aspiring to do something similar, it would just be so lovely to hear what this experience has been for you.
Of course, I started with, of course, my journey is very traumatic and life changing, life altering. And it started with, because I had a broken neck. And so I went to this brain center. I had an opportunity to go to this brain center to be able to help figure out what was wrong with me and to help improve my health. But it cost a lot of money. Like it was out of pocket. Insurance didn't cover that. And so I just reached out to my community and said, I have this opportunity. Would anyone be willing to help me? And people came out of the woodwork to help me fund that stay at the brain center. And so part of it is a huge thing to me. And so I wanted them to know what their money was going toward. So I began to share on my socials, this is what I'm doing. This is what you all paid for. This is what I'm learning. And that began a huge movement I didn't anticipate, of people just being inspired by what I was going through and what I was doing and how I was fighting my way through and advocating for myself. And so I just began to share more openly about what I was dealing with and realized that people can relate to the authenticity and the vulnerability that I was sharing. And then people began to say, you should really put this in a book. Like, you should really write about what you're experiencing because it's very inspiring. And when you're living it, it's a totally different story. I even said in a post, like, you people are suggesting that I write a book, but what people who wants to read a story about what I'm living? Like, this is just my life. I'm just living it. And so I, put it on the back burner because I've convinced myself that people really weren't interested in what I was going through. And so then I had an opportunity to share my story on stage in front of almost 2,000 people. And the result of that became obvious that people were interested in what I had to share. People were interested in my story. And so I thought, I need to hone this. Didn't have a clue what I was doing, didn't have a strategy. I was just out there like, okay, I'm going to share my story, and whatever happens, happens. We'll just do this. And so I connected with Blair Kaplan Venables. She created the Global Resilience Project, and she asked me if I would share my story in a book, a co-author book that she was creating. And so I thought, well, that'd be kind of cool. It's just one chapter. So I had to take my story and condense it down to less than 1,000 words. And that was very difficult for me. And so I thought I did that. And then I thought, you know what? There's so much in my story. Maybe I should do it. Maybe I should put it in my own book. And so I began to just put stuff out, write stuff into a document. And it turned into my own book that I published myself, that I have an editor who looked it over, made a few changes, published it myself, did everything myself. I get messages all the time asking me, who is your PR person? Who do you hire to do all that you're doing? Because it's amazing. And I keep saying, it's just me. I'm just doing what I feel led to do. And I feel like that's where the magic is. I have people messaging me saying, teach me how to do what you've done. Show me what you've done. And I keep saying, I really can't, because it's authentic to me. It's who I am. I simply follow what I feel inside, and that's what I share. And so it's literally taken on a life of its own that I have only ever dreamed of. And it's something that I want to encourage other people to do, that it is not as difficult as it may seem, publishing it yourself and doing all of this stuff yourself. And I just really want to encourage people to not talk yourself out of it. I talked myself out of it for years. And then when I finally decided to do it, I was like, oh my gosh, I should have done this a long time ago. But it wasn't the time, now is the time.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, definitely, it's very, very doable. It's not as hard as you may think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking about people listening, and all of us can identify with the reasons why we shouldn't do something, or what all the other people will say about it if we choose to do that activity. But in the end, it is really, if we go back to what we started with our heart center, it's going back to that authentic self and being able to tell the story the way you want it to be told. Because there's so many people who can take your story and spin it the way that they need it. And you have then that piece of being able to bring it forward in the way that is resonating with who you are and what you do. Yeah. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. That was something that, my story involves other people. And I think this is something that everyone deals with, whether it's writing a book or whether it's sharing on social media or whatever it is, living your life. It always involves other people. We don't live life in isolation. We live life in community. And so my story involves other people. And it was not received well when I first shared the first draft of my story with the people who were involved. It wasn't necessarily received well. And so I really had to work through, respecting that relationship while also being true to the integrity of my story. And so while being authentic. So yeah, there are some challenges to it, but
Mm-hmm.
it can be worked through. Like, it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then with that, you've also been running your company. I know your pictures behind. Those people on the podcast won't see it, but you've got Polish the Mirror. So as you're going through this process of having empathy for the people that you're going to be writing about, and telling a story from a different version than their reality was. Do you want to just talk a little bit about some of the things that have resulted because you did all that? What does that mean for the relationships you have and where you've gone from there?
I feel like it's because of the way I handled it, respecting their view. I did remove some of the pieces of my book. The version that's out now is not the original version. After the people who were also involved looked over it and shared with me what they approved of and didn't approve of, I did pull some things. I did reword some things. Um, in a way that keeps the integrity of the story. I can still tell my story. It
Mhm.
just doesn't include as much about specific people as it did in the beginning. And because of that, initially, there was some tension in that relationship. I respected that and said, this is what I have done, and shared the next version with those people, and they approved of it. Now our relationships are stronger than they were before. And so and it's exactly what you said, that their version of living that story is different than mine. And I was able to help them understand that this is my version of it. And I want to respect your version of it as well, but also include you in it. And so now, like I said, our relationship is stronger than it was before because
Mhm.
we went through that conflict and because we were able to work through it in that way, in a respectful way that worked for both of us.
Mhm. Mhm. And I just, as people are listening and thinking about facing fears, some of our biggest fears is, of course, our family members and friends who are around us and living with us and know all of our foibles and
Yes.
still love us and still
Right.
stand there and to start to have that empathy for the way that things unfold for people and the way they view it. Um, it's just when we're thinking about facing fear, I don't think people think of it in that way. They're thinking about their piece here and that tunnel that they're on, but taking that wider view and then some reflective time from different viewpoints. And we don't often think of that either when we're faced with fear. We're thinking about how do I conquer it, but it also
Yes.
is how are all of the people around me and in the relationships with me able to do that. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
I didn't really think about that so much. You just think, oh well, we'll just cut those pieces out of the story, you know. But
Right.
what growth do you have from it? Yeah,
Exactly. Yes.
yeah.
It's being able to see things from other people's perspective. And I feel like that's a journey that you have to get to, that's not something that comes natural to us,
Mm-hmm.
that we journey our way to getting to that point, but it's such a gift.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, now share with me a little bit about heading to Los Angeles. And because I think this is one of those aspirations where I'd be like, it would be so lovely if my product was able to be on display. But what does it really mean when you get to do one of those big events?
I will tell you that this is another one of those things that fell into my lap, that was presented to me, that I did not seek out. And at first I had this like choking feeling of almost not being able to breathe, of I'm going to take my book to an event at the Emmys in Los Angeles and be able to celebrities, writers, directors, and producers who are very well known. And that is something I'm going to do. It was literally a question like, is this something I want to do? Because like I said, am an introvert. I grew up in a small town. I'm not really concerned with notoriety and fame. That doesn't really make a difference to me. I am heart centered. I'm all about people's hearts and connecting with them and making a difference on a personal level. And so I did have a lot of fears. I'm going to get on a plane. I haven't flown in, oh my gosh, probably 30 years. It's been a long time since well, maybe 20 years. Excuse me, a long time since I had flown because of the accident and the injury. I couldn't fly. And when my doctor approved that I could fly, all of these things came into play. into this huge opportunity that was available to me. And so I really had to fight through a lot of the fears to even accept the opportunity. And when I finally accepted the opportunity, even amidst the fears, it was overwhelming. I got to Los Angeles, and if you have ever been to Los Angeles, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's a whole different world there. It's completely different. I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma. It's nothing like Los Angeles. And so I stepped foot out into the airport and was instantly hit with this overwhelm and this almost a panic of what am I doing? And got to the hotel in Beverly Hills and walked in, and instantly imposter syndrome hit me. I had, all of these other people were there with their products, and I was just like, I don't belong here. I don't fit in here. This doesn't feel good to me. It was very uncomfortable. It was not what I expected it to be. And although I loved the relationships that I eventually made with all of these people, it was very uncomfortable at first. And I seriously considered turning around and going right back home because it was just not something that felt good to me. But I had paid the money, I had the room, I had all the things. So I thought, I'm just going to give it a day and I'm going to see what the first day is like. And was invited to a celebrity party that evening. And so went to that party, still really, really kind of leery of what is this I'm doing? Who am I to be here at this celebrity party? And realized that celebrities are just people, that they're people just like us, that we hold them on a pedestal, but in all reality, they're people just like us who have different jobs than we do. And so at the celebrity party, they were asking me, "Are you an actress? What do you do? What kind of show? What show are you on?" And then I would say, "Well, I'm an author. I'm actually involved in an event where I'll be giving my book away." And so then they began to ask me about my story, and I shared my story. And one of them said to me, "You are the most interesting person here. You have a real story." She said, "We are all actors. We pretend to be things, but you're a real person with a real story that has an impact. You're the most interesting person here." And another of the actresses said to me, "I wasn't going to come tonight, but now I know why I did, because I needed to meet you and hear your story." And so that began to hit me in my heart like, okay, no, my story is needed here. Of all places, my story is needed here. And so I began to really kind of settle in and see, okay, there's a purpose in this. I can do this, even amidst the overwhelm. And so from that, I met all kinds of celebrities, all kinds of pictures I have. And now I have a couple of producers who are interested in turning my story into a documentary to be able to share it more widely. And it's just, wild. I keep saying, is this my life? It's just, kind of crazy because I never thought that my life would end up like this after all I've been through. But I'm just very, very grateful.
Hmm. And I can see where this theme is going today, around relationships outside of ourselves and facing fear. Because, you think, oh, those celebrities, they all go to the parties and whatever, but they're also feeling the same stress of, do I belong here? Who am I? I'm one of the actresses who is down here, and I'm meeting the ones who are up here, or waiting for the producers to come by, all those different pieces, or you don't think about the dynamics of what's going on in a room like that, as everybody's trying
Yes,
to find their spot,
exactly.
their whole, yeah, wow.
Exactly.
Um, how empowering, though, to think you've walked through that fear of going through several doors across even just that short couple of hours. And then the other side of that, in realizing how your story was impacting people, that they yes, they play the roles of other people, but they also are really looking for authentic, because I'm sure they have to play all kinds of roles that they would never have chosen, but then to find out that true grit and peace underneath, that really is inspiring. Yeah.
It's so true. Another one of the actresses said to me, excuse me, she said, "I have a story of my own, but I don't feel like I can share it because I have this persona that I'm supposed to uphold." And so that really hit me, like
Mm,
these people have real lives that they're living with fear and anxiety and overwhelm. but they can't show that because they have this persona that they have to uphold. And so it just made me realize how important authenticity is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I will say that that experience of I won't say I fought through the fear, but I allowed it to be what it was, and I worked with it. I worked with my fear and was able to do that even at the Emmys, has allowed me to, at the time of this recording, excuse me, next week I will be featured on a Times Square billboard in New York City. So I'll be going to New York to be featured on a Times Square billboard. And I will be honest with you that when I first heard that this was going to happen, I was not excited about it. I was overwhelmed and thought, I can't, New York City, like, oh my gosh, no way. But because of that event at the Emmys and what I was able to do there, I now am excited about going to New York City to see myself on this billboard because I know I've done something similar once. It's exactly what you were saying. I have worked through it once, and now I know I can do it again. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just a learning, a part of the journey, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that piece also, that up on those billboards are regular people. Sometimes it's the
Yes,
actor playing their role, and they've got their character, but it's real people up there. And
absolutely.
yeah, oh, and standing in Times Square, that's just so magical. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
surreal.
now if I back up to giving your book away, can you describe what it felt like? Because I know one piece is that many people are going to have my book, that many people are reading my story, but what is it like to hand that book over and offer that inspiration to a person?
It was extremely moving, and this was, the celebrity party was the night before, so I had experienced that. Then the next day, I go and these celebrities are coming by my table, one after the other after the other. I'm signing my books and handing them to them and sharing just a little blip of my story. And what I found was they all have stories of their own too. That, like I said, they're just humans, just like we are. They just have a different job. But they were all so moved by my story. Literally, there were jaws dropping the whole day. I have a picture of Miguel Nunez. I don't know if you knew who he is, of his jaw just wide open because of my story. And it was really interesting to me, the feeling, because I know what it's like to have my community be supportive of me and share my book and purchase it, but to be able to share my story with people who most people hold up on a pedestal, and they were still responding that way to me and my story. It was just really, really an interesting feeling of my story is impacting people even of this high caliber, and that it was just helped confirm that I'm on the right track, that I'm doing the right thing, that sharing my story and my journey is what I'm supposed to be doing right now, and that it's impacting lives across the globe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking about those people that are holding their stories because of their job and thinking it's not going to be valuable, but then the inspiration that you've provided for them, um, that to go into that authentic piece of yourself and be who you are, um, because you can tell your story and then you can rise up with that fame piece and the notoriety that comes with it, but then to just show those people who experience that from a from their falsehood of being the character they play to what would it be like for them to be their authentic self and be actually heard. Um,
Absolutely. I
wow.
do feel like part of my mission is to just be an example for other people. Part of the reason I share so openly on my socials is so that I can just show that it's possible. Like, I went from being completely incapacitated, almost swallowing a handful of pills, to now being featured on a Times Square billboard. Like, it's possible. And so I feel like, part of my mission is just being an example for other people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, so what's next? I mean, you've got Times Square. I know that's coming up in the short future, but there's something else now that with all that you've got behind you and beside you, is there something else that's coming forward?
There are, at this point, the time of this recording, I cannot share it yet. I have a couple of really big articles coming out with some very well-known people in the industry that I'm in, that I'm really, really honored. I'm just really, really flattered to be placed alongside them in a magazine. I have those coming up. I have an Ivy League speaking tour. I'll be speaking on Ivy League stages to some of the brightest minds in these universities. And I'm going to be going to Cambridge in August to speak on the stage there. And so lots of traveling this year,
Mm-hmm.
lots of fun things coming up. And that's just part of it. I'm speaking at, conferences and workshops and those kind of things, just sharing my purpose of learning how to polish the mirror and be authentic and vulnerable to make your life and your business work for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you just looped in there and your business. And I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, we're thinking about ourselves and ourselves walking through fear, but then we have this personality of our businesses and how we conduct our businesses, and they have those personalities as well. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it's, part of what I teach is that they can be combined, that your business will do much better when you're authentic about who you are and approach it in that way and allow your clients to see you from an authentic place that really draws people in. So
Hmm.
that's part of the message that I share. And I'm looking to share that more with corporations because it can make a huge difference with their employees and the way that they get along and
Hmm.
the productivity of the company.
Hmm. I'm I'm thinking now to how this conversation has been looped around from where we stand in our place of fear, and you're just thinking about the CEOs at the heads of companies, or somebody who's owning even a small business, and they may have 8 to 10 employees. So often, the viewpoint that we're looking at our company from is in that production productivity place. And when you start to think about the fears that your employees have when they come through your door. It might be about work, but it might just be about getting through life, and it might be where they are with what's going on for them. And although we don't want to get caught up into the trials and tribulations of everyday life, it is really interesting to think then what happens now if you can look at it from a completely different perspective of through the eyes of my employees, what helps them to shine in this company or help them to find the way they want the company to shine. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. The companies are made up of their employees, and the better care they take of their employees, the better their business will be.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. Well, congratulations. I'm
Thank you.
I was able to meet you at the start of that book coming out and knowing that part of your story, and to just see how you have gracefully walked from place to place and dealt with what you needed to deal with, and then say, okay, today's another day, and here we go. It's just thank you for doing what you're doing and what you're offering. It's so
Oh,
valuable.
you're very welcome. I just keep saying I get paid to be me. Like I'm
Yeah.
just authentically me. That's one of my mantras every morning is I get paid to be me. So that's what I want. That's what I help other people do.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, you have a special group um, that you've been putting together. Do you want to share a little bit about it?
Oh, I would love to. Yes, the my business is called Polish the Mirror. I'm all about going within, polishing the mirror to see what's there in your soul. So I created this group called the Mirror Collective. My mission is to help people move from self love to soul love. But what I realized was there are a lot of us who aren't even at the self love level that we don't even know much about ourselves, that we know more about other people than we know about ourselves, and that we need to change that. That if we want to change this world or make this world a different place, we need to start with ourselves. And so this Mirror Collective is a transformative self-discovery journey that's very flexible. It's a self-paced model, but it's free, and it's all about figuring out who you are authentically. Who are you at your core? Who are you? Who is your truest self? And it's 10 weeks, but like I said, it's very flexible, and I will be putting content out once a week, and you can work through it throughout that week. And then we do that for 10 weeks. And then if you're interested, we move to the next level, which is 10 more weeks, and then to the next level, which is 10 more weeks. But the first one is free, the Mirror Collective. It's all about self-discovery. And I would love to have anybody join us that's interested. And my website is www.getamyshelp.com, GETAMYSHELP.com. And you can find a link there to join us in that. And all of my other things are on that website as well.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, and you had when you launched your book, you did a bunch of readings and reflections and brought a group of people together, and that was a very powerful experience. So I just want to share with the audience that the way that you bring people together is just I don't know, inspirational isn't even the right word for it, but there's something that happens magically within the room. So if you're thinking polishing the mirror, there's this magic that transpires. And so as you were doing the book readings and sharing your story and allowing people to reflect and think, you were creating such an interesting space. So I'm really excited about where you've taken this next piece, because it allows you more space to bring in the voices and to bring in those doubts and the self-sacrificing that we all do, and to be able to put that nail on the head and say, yeah, we know it's there, but let's move it. Let's get it out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you so much for sharing that. I
Hmm.
really am glad that you had that experience. It makes my heart smile.
Well, I'm just happy I get more time to spend with you, so it's always great.
Yeah, me too.
um, so as we finish off the discussion about fear, is there anything that you've discovered that you hadn't thought about before?
I have lived a lot of my life in fear. Was a very anxious kid, and so I really was just fearful. I didn't realize that's what it was at the time, but as I got older and went through my journey, I realized that this is just fear. And what I've learned is that fear can actually be a good motivator. It can help you get to a place in your life that you wouldn't have been able to get to had you not had that fear there. Not that I want us to deal with fear, but I want us to reframe the fear and see it from a different perspective of this is something that can help you instead of something that can hold you back. And that's what I have been able to do. And that's the way I choose to use fear now. And that anybody can do that. It's possible for anybody to just reframe that fear into something that is very helpful.
Yeah. And I think so much of the time we get stopped, and we get that frozen you're in the headlights bit that just won't let us go forward. But if you had to stop for something in the middle of the road, you can go around it, and you can turn back and look at it from another perspective. And for people to realize that it's not the stop sign on the road. It's the move with caution. And
Yes, it's a speed bump.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, perfect. Well, Amy, thank you for sharing this part. All the best as you stand in Times Square and see yourself. And for those people who might not have found Amy on social media, please do, so you can follow her journey. And I'm going to try to have this podcast out before you hit Times Square so people will know to look for you. So thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much for being
much.
here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always an honor and a pleasure to visit with you. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Amy. All right, everyone, we inspire you to think of some of the things that you might have been holding back with the fear that you've had. Think about how you can move forward. And if some of the affirmations we used today were helpful, then you know where you can find those, but also to just think about it can be very simple to just make those tiny shifts, get you going in the direction you want to be. Be well, everyone.